Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to go back into review mode because there are some events around the globe that are definitely worth reporting on, and one of those events is a Grandmaster tournament in China, in Gangzhou or Gangzhou, I don't know how exactly to pronounce the name of the place, where Liren is playing in a round-robin tournament. Said tournament is going to allow the Chinese top GM to actually have the 30 rated games under his belt that will allow him to participate in the candidates tournament. So this is certainly great news for all chess lovers around the world, because obviously a candidates tournament with Liren in it is far more exciting than without him. So, I have got a great game to show you from this tournament that is a particularly fascinating one. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. In the white trunks is our one and only Liren against Grandmaster Jinshi Bai. Now, the opening is the ever so popular Tarrasch defense that is quite widely liked, even among elite Grandmasters, as a reasonably safe way to play for a draw and equality. Among others, Anish Giri, Dubov, Mamed Yarov, and many others play it on a fairly regular basis. Grishuk even. So yeah, there are a fair few dudes backing the Tarrasch horse, and Jinshi Bai does the exact same. And here Liren actually chooses a bit of an offbeat variation, if you will. The second most popular move, so I perhaps shouldn't call it offbeat, dc5, instead of the very well known and very theoretical pawn g3. Now pawn takes c5 allows black to enter this exciting variation with d4, kicking the knight on c3, and after knight a4 comes bishop takes c5. This is of course not a blunder, but a well-known tactical motive based on the idea that if knight takes, then check and queen takes on c5, which is exactly what was played, because white argues that having the two bishops is definitely beneficial, whereas black's argument is the freer development for the remaining pieces, knight f6, bishop g4 or f5 and castles, and also the fact that the d4 pawn is a bit of a thorn that makes white's life somewhat difficult when it comes to efficiently developing the rest of the crew. And so here comes a very curious idea that I really love. It's by no means new, but it is something that appeals to me a great deal. Basically, Liren here decides to turn this opening into a gambit and chucks b4 at the opponent. Now, this is a truly remarkable idea, and to be honest, I had to do my own investigation to figure out what was going on. The game continued with queen f5 for the record, but I was quite keen to know what was the plan in case of knight b4, because queen a4 check is met by knight c6, and we don't exactly have an awful lot with white for the pawn, whereas rook c1 is seemingly easily met by queen d6, and again, it looks to me that black is staying afloat easily, except that here there is an absolutely stunning idea that in my opinion is extremely difficult to find unless you rely on computer's evaluation and computer's assistance, like I did. There is no way I would have found this. The breathtaking idea here is to play pawn e3, which allows white to play for a marvelous trick, which is that if they take said e3, then after bishop c3, black is in quite a bit of trouble here to actually survive, because now after the queen trade, the both knight and the g7 pawn is hanging. It is still a theoretical variation, and in fact, d3 is still not a mistake. ef2 is immediately a game-losing blunder. Instead, knight d5 is still known to theory, and yeah, there have been a few games with queen takes d1. So yeah, there are various ideas available, but I just wanted to show you this absolutely insane bishop c3 move. It's so beautiful. And to me, who doesn't really play the Tarrasch at all, this was actually new. But yeah, actually turns out that after queen takes, it's of course king takes, so that we even deny the check of the knight. And now this is well and truly a double attack. And after knight takes, bishop takes, knight c1, king c1, we will pick off the rook and enter a slightly better endgame. The reason why I'm saying slightly is because that bishop will still find it difficult to get out. In fact, even for this, there have been many games played. So nothing is new under the sun apparently, but to me it was new and I really liked it. Anyway, the game continued. Queen f5, rook c1. White is intending now to come up to c5 and hassle the queen from the side and support b5 as well. Knight d8 and bishop b4. Now at this point I really like white. It seems to me that now white is going to gain the upper hand. It's a little bit of an interesting toing and froing that both sides are willing to give up a pawn or not wanting to have a pawn, but rather the initiative. And here the idea of course is to move the rook and thus denying castling. Excuse me, knight e6 was played. And after rook c4, now it seems to me that white will be able to capture the d4 pawn without any major difficulties in completing development. And that's exactly what happened. Knight d5 was played. We munched the d4 pawn, take, and e3. And once again, I think black was happy to reach this position, thinking that, okay, I'm a pawn down, but white is still 2 moves away from castling, so hopefully I will be able to turn on the heat a little bit and do some damage before said castling would occur. Queen e7 was played in that spirit, queen d2, rook d8, creating a pin. The engine disapproves. The engine prefers a5, trying to open up a new battlefront, and that makes a lot of sense to me actually. Rook d8 looks like it doesn't quite have enough oomph to it. After knight d4, rook d4, white is still gonna be fine. So he just carried on developing, take, and after castles, white has reached a very comfortable middle game scenario with an extra pawn. And probably this game would have never ever made it to any social media or YouTube platform or anywhere at all if it wasn't for the fact that the middle game has something really spicy to show us. So rook takes, queen takes, b6, and again it's I'm honestly surprised, and I'm not criticizing Ding Liren here at all, but to me a4 is a no-brainer here to remove the pawn from hanging and just keep the extra pawn and you know, just play for a win. Perhaps rook a1, open the back rank, play a5. There are a lot of moves that offer themselves without too many dramas, and the engine approves. Instead, he went rook d1, allowing the a2 pawn to be captured, and then he just started playing an endgame scenario with more active white pieces, but no real advantage to boot. In fact, after queen f8, according to the engine, we are dead even, which is definitely correct in terms of material, but white still has the odd trick here and there that black needs to neutralize. h3 was played, and this is where the wheels started to come off, and I think that the main culprit would have been the time, because at this point, Ding Liren still had 45 minutes on his clock versus his opponent's 7. And here comes immediately a mistake after rook d4, pawn g6, which allows this queen to park on f6, a very convenient square because it stays in the vicinity of the king. It allows rook d8, it allows plans with h4, h5, h6. Overall, a move I would have not probably played, but rather something like h5 with the same idea, but with fewer obvious weakening consequences. So g6 was played, no biggie still, but now black needs to be a tad more accurate, which once again, under severe time pressure, is difficult. Now we are down to 35 seconds for black. Rook f5, perfect. Queen h4. Now rook d8 is a threat. So queen c5 is played, and this is actually a game-losing blunder. And here comes the absolute insane finish that just goes to show what an absolute world class of a beast Ding Liren is. Check this out. Bishop e4, rook e5, the only square for the rook. And boomski! Bishop takes g6. Actually, that is... boomski! That is a boomski. I mean, what a move! Like, finding an idea like this is extremely difficult because this type of sacrifice just doesn't happen to be in the arsenal of most chess players. Like, it doesn't fall under the cliches, the patterns, the attacking patterns that we traditionally associate with this pawn layout. Like, bishop takes g6 is traditionally not a common sack. against the fianchettoed king. In fact, it's the most uncommon thing to see ever. I mean, as soon as we have got the absence of the fianchettoed bishop, you expect disasters on the dark squares, and so usually we think along those lines when it comes to trying to infiltrate this defensive formation. This move is like, what are you doing, man? And it turns out it just works like clockwork. Beautiful. HG6 is the easiest to deal with. Rook check, and we have got a mate. So that's easy peasy. Okay, everyone saw that. But the subtleties after FG are just insanely beautiful. White has got Rook D7. Actually, yeah, only winning move. Rook D7. The threat is mate. And now there is quite a large number of defensive ideas for black, but all of them, every single one of them, are losing. So let's go one by one. The game continuation was Bishop F7. If instead H5, we just go Queen F6. And now I would like to already point out to you something very curious, and that is that the Rook on E5 turns out to be a major problem here, because if the Queen was to go back to the defense, it always hangs the Rook. Of course, now we have got a force mate instead with Queen G6, so that's a moot point, but nonetheless, it will come into the play very soon. Another potential move here is Rook H5, whereupon we play Queen F6, and again, the seemingly a-okay Queen F8 still loses after Rook D8. The Queen-Rook combo and their amazing cooperation is just breathtakingly beautiful in this combination, starting with Bishop takes G6. And so last but not least, Bishop F7 was played, and again, here comes my motive, Queen F6, and once again, it feels like it should be so easy to defend the threat, but it's a dual threat. So by moving the Queen to F6, we actually have Rook E D8 as well, should the Rook, for example, abandon the E file. We have Rook there. If they go Queen F8, we take the Rook. That's the motive I mentioned. And all of a sudden, we find that we ran out of moves that actually defend the bishop on F7. It can't move because of Queen Mate. And so what to do? Just magnificent stuff. So, yeah, black went for Queen C1 check. But after Queen H2, there was King H2, there was nothing left in the tank other than offering resignation, because rook hanging, check hanging, mate hang. Actually, that's not mate, but this is mate. It's just too much is on. It's just too much is on. An absolutely marvelous finish by Ding Liren, and I'm really curious to see how he's going to perform between now and the candidates, and hopefully he's going to make it to the candidates. So yeah, let's see how he goes. I might actually come back with a few more games from this Gangzhou tournament, but there's a fair bit going on at the moment around the world, so we might actually look elsewhere for the next video. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to like, to sub, to leave a comment, and I will be back with more soon. Thank you.